The pristine white envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, its elegant calligraphy mocking Zoe Bennett from across her perfectly organized desk. She knew what it contained before she even opened it, and the familiar flutter of anxiety in her chest confirmed her suspicions. Wedding invitations always did this to her, but this one felt different. "Please join us for the wedding of Rebecca Martinez and James Wellington." She read aloud, her voice catching slightly on the location. Santorini, Greece. Of course it had to be a destination wedding. Of course Rebecca would choose the most romantic, most complicated, most logistically challenging location possible. Zoe's phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "I know this is short notice, but we need your help. The wedding planner we hired just canceled. You're the only person I trust to make this perfect. Please say yes. 6 weeks. Rebecca was giving her 6 weeks to plan a wedding for 200 guests in a foreign country. Zoe's fingers automatically reached for her color-coded planner, already mentally calculating timelines and vendor lists. This was exactly the kind of challenge she lived for, kind that made her reputation as the most sought-after event planner in Chicago. Her phone rang, interrupting her mental calculations. Zoe Bennett Events. This is Zoe. Well, if it isn't the queen of impossible timelines herself. The voice hit her like a physical blow. Deep, slightly mocking, with that particular way of drawing out vowels that had annoyed her throughout 4 years of college. Nathan Cross. She hadn't heard that voice in 3 years. Not since their disastrous encounter at Rebecca's birthday party. "What do you want, Nathan?" she asked, her professional mask slipping for just a moment. "Same thing you want, apparently. Rebecca called me about photographing her wedding. Seems we'll be working together again." So he closed her eyes, remembering their last collaboration, university's fundraising gala, where her meticulous planning had been completely derailed by Nathan's spontaneous decision to rearrange the entire photography schedule. The event had been a success, not before she'd spent 3 sleepless nights and consumed her body weight in coffee to fix his creative improvements. "I haven't agreed to anything yet," she said carefully. "Oh, come on, Zoe. We both know you can't resist a challenge. Besides, Rebecca said you already started making lists." She glanced down at her notepad, where she had indeed begun sketching out a preliminary timeline. "How did you lucky guess? Some things never change." The line went quiet for a moment, and Zoe found herself remembering college Nathan. The way he'd show up to group projects at the last minute with ideas that were somehow both completely impractical and absolutely brilliant. The way he'd challenge every plan she made, not out of malice, but because he genuinely believed there was always a better way. The way he'd made her feel like all her careful preparation was just an elaborate way of avoiding actually living. "Look," Nathan continued, his voice softer now, "I know we have history, but Rebecca's my friend too, and she deserves the best wedding possible. I think we can manage to be professional for a few weeks, professional, as if their problem had ever been about professionalism. As if the real issue wasn't the way Nathan made her feel completely out of control, the way his presence turned her organized world into beautiful chaos." "Fine," she said finally, "but we do this my way. I'm the wedding planner, you're the photographer. That means you follow my timeline. You show up when I tell you to show up. You don't make any creative decisions without running them by me first." She could practically hear him grinning. "Wouldn't dream of it, boss." 2 weeks later, Zoe stood in the arrivals terminal of Santorini Airport, checking her watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. Nathan's flight had landed 20 minutes ago, and according to her perfectly calibrated schedule, he should have been through customs by now. She'd already confirmed the villa rental, met with the local vendors, and created a detailed day-by-day breakdown of everything that needed to happen. Before the wedding, Zoe. She turned to find Nathan emerging from the crowd, looking frustratingly unchanged. His dark hair was slightly longer, curling around his ears in that deliberately messy way that had always made her want to either run her fingers through it or cut it off entirely. He was wearing faded jeans and a simple white t-shirt. Yes. Carrying a beat-up leather camera bag and a single backpack that probably contained everything he owned. "You're late," she said, consulting her watch again. "Exactly on time. The flight landed when it landed." He gestured toward the large windows overlooking the Mediterranean. "Besides, Have you seen this view? I had to take a few shots. Of course he had. We have a full day planned. The venue walkthrough is in 2 hours. Then we're meeting with the florist, the caterer, and the band. After that, we're going to get some dinner and watch the sunset. Nathan interrupted. It's Greece, Zoe. Even you can't schedule the sun. She felt that familiar flutter of frustration, the one that had followed her through every interaction with Nathan Cross since freshman year. I don't schedule the sun. I schedule around the sun. There's a difference, if you say so. He hefted, his bag higher on his shoulder. Lead the way, boss. The villa Rebecca had chosen was everything Zoe had expected from the photos and more. Whitewashed walls cascaded down the hillside toward the sea. Connected by stone pathways lined with olive trees and bougainvillea, the ceremony space was a natural amphitheater overlooking the caldera with the reception terrace just below it. It was beautiful, romantic, and absolutely perfect. It was also completely impractical. The aisle is too narrow, Zoe muttered, pacing the ceremony space with her clipboard. We'll need to widen it, or Rebecca's dress will get caught on the chairs. And the acoustics are terrible up here. We'll need to bring in a sound system, which means running cables. Which means you're already thinking about problems that don't exist yet, Nathan said. He was crouched near the edge of the terrace, camera in hand, capturing the way the afternoon light played across the water. Look at this place, Zoe. It's magical. Magic doesn't make weddings happen. Planning makes weddings happen. Planning makes events happen. Magic makes weddings happen. He stood up, brushing dust off his knees. Remember Jenny Morrison's wedding? It's the senior year. Zoe remembered. She'd spent months planning Jenny's campus wedding, coordinating with the university administration, booking the string quartet, arranging the flowers. Everything had been perfect until the morning of the ceremony, when an unexpected rainstorm had forced them to move everything indoors at the last minute. That was a disaster, she said. That was beautiful. Everyone pitched in. We moved everything to the student center, and you turned it into something completely different. Better even. Jenny still says it was the most romantic wedding she's ever been to, because I had backup plans, because I'd prepared for contingencies, because you let go of your perfect plan and trusted that something better might happen. They stared at each other across the terrace, the Mediterranean wind whipping Zoe's carefully styled hair around her face. She could feel the old argument, building between them, the fundamental disagreement that had defined their relationship since college. Control versus spontaneity, planning versus instinct, safety versus risk. I should check on the flower delivery, she said finally, looking down at her clipboard. The florist doesn't close for another 2 hours. Like to be thorough. Nathan walked over to where she stood, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with the scent of sea air and travel. What are you so afraid of, Zoe? The question hit her like a physical blow. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm trying to do my job. Your job is to make Rebecca happy. And Rebecca will be happy because she's marrying the man she loves in one of the most beautiful places on earth. The rest is just details. Details matter. Some details matter. Others are just ways to avoid being present for what's actually happening. Before Zoe could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. How are things going? Are you and Nathan playing nice? She looked up to find Nathan watching her, his expression softer than she'd expected. We should head back to town, she said. Long day tomorrow. Actually, Nathan said, pulling out his own phone, I think we should stay for the sunset. For the photos, he added quickly, seeing her expression. I need to understand the lighting for the ceremony, Zoe wanted to stick to her schedule and her safe, predictable timeline. But something in Nathan's voice stopped her. Maybe it was the way he was looking at her, like he was seeing something she wasn't sure she wanted him to see. Maybe it was the way the golden light was starting to paint the white buildings around them. Maybe it was just the fact that she was tired of always being the person who said no. Fine, she said, settling onto the stone wall that bordered the terrace. But just for the photos. Nathan smiled and raised his camera. Just for the photos. As the sun began to set over the Aegean Sea, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Zoe found herself forgetting about timelines and vendor meetings and all the thousand things that could go wrong. But for just a moment, she let herself be, present in the beauty of the moment. In the sound of the waves below and the warmth of the stone beneath her hands, she didn't notice Nathan taking her picture until it was too late. "Delete that," she said, but she was smiling. Not a chance. "That's the first time I've seen you really smile since I got here." "I smile plenty. You perform smiles?" That was different. The sun slipped below the horizon, and the sky deepened too. Purple. Zoe realized she'd been sitting there for over an hour, completely forgetting about her schedule for the first time in years. The thought should have terrified her, but instead she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. "We should head back," she said softly. "Yeah," Nathan agreed, but neither of them moved. Tomorrow would bring vendor meetings and timeline, adjustments, and all the careful choreography of wedding planning. But tonight, for just a moment, Zoe Bennett let herself sit in the gathering darkness and remember what it felt like to be surprised by beauty, even if it was Nathan Cross's fault. The next morning arrived with the kind of brilliant Greek sunshine that made everything look like a postcard. Zoe was already dressed and reviewing her notes when Nathan knocked on her villa door at 7:30. Carrying 2 cups of coffee and what looked like a pastry wrapped in paper. "Peace offering," he said, holding out one of the cups. Asked the woman at the bakery what you'd like. She said you look like someone who takes her coffee seriously. Despite herself, Zoe smiled. The coffee was perfect, strong and dark, exactly how she liked it. "Thank you, that was thoughtful." "Don't sound so surprised." "I can be thoughtful when I want to be." They walked together toward the town center, where their first meeting of the day was scheduled. The morning air was crisp and sweet, carrying the scent of jasmine and sea salt. Zoe found herself stealing glances at Nathan as he pointed out details she'd missed the day before, the way the morning light caught the edges of the buildings. The elderly man who sat in the same cafe chair every day, the stray cat that had adopted the flower shop. "You see everything," she said without thinking. "Occupational hazard? Though I think you see plenty too. You just see different things." Their first meeting was with Dimitri, the local coordinator who would be handling the logistics on the ground. Zoe had prepared a detailed list of questions and requirements. But within minutes of sitting down, she realized her carefully planned approach wasn't going to work. "The musicians you requested," Dimitri said, consulting his own notes. "They cannot play on the terrace. The acoustics, you understand. The sound, it goes out to the sea and disturbs the neighbors. We have had complaints." Zoe felt her chest tighten. "But that's where the ceremony is supposed to be. The whole timeline depends on the music starting at exactly 5:30. Perhaps they could play from the lower terrace," Dimitri suggested. "The sound would carry up and the neighbors would be happy." "That won't work. The bride won't be able to hear her cue, and the processional timing will be completely off." Zoe could feel her voice getting higher, that familiar panic creeping in when her perfect plans started to unravel. Nathan leaned forward. "What if we had the musicians play acoustically? No amplification, just the natural sound of the instruments. It would be more intimate, more personal." "But they won't be loud enough for 200 guests," Zoe protested. "What if they weren't supposed to be?" Nathan turned to her, his expression serious. "What if instead of trying to make the ceremony fit the space, we made the space fit the ceremony? Small ensemble, acoustic music, maybe even have the processional start from a different location entirely." That's not what Rebecca planned. Rebecca planned to get married in a beautiful place surrounded by people she loves. Everything else is just details. Zoe wanted to argue, but something in Nathan's voice stopped her. He wasn't dismissing her concerns or making fun of her need for order. He was offering a different way of thinking about the problem. "I need to call Rebecca," she said finally. An hour later, she hung up the phone with a mixture of relief and surprise. Rebecca had loved the idea of acoustic music and a more intimate ceremony. She'd even suggested moving the processional to the winding stone path that led down from the villa, so guests could watch her descent like something out of a fairy tale. "See?" Nathan said, not bothering to hide his satisfied grin. Sometimes the best plans are the ones you don't make. Don't get cocky. We still have 17 other vendors to coordinate. But as the day went on, Zoe found herself relying more and more on Nathan's instincts. When the florist couldn't source enough white roses for the centerpieces, Nathan suggested mixing in local wildflowers that would complement the natural landscape. When the caterer worried about serving hot food on the terrace, Nathan recommended a Mediterranean mess-style reception that would be both practical and elegant. Each suggestion was thoughtful, creative, and completely different from anything Zoe would have planned. And each one was exactly right. By evening, it solved most of the major logistical challenges, but Zoe felt more drained than energized. She was used to being the person with all the answers, the one who could solve any problem with enough planning and preparation. Working with Nathan required a different kind of flexibility, one that left her feeling exposed and uncertain. "You're quiet," Nathan observed, as they walked back toward their villas. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, just tired." "No, you're never just tired. You're processing something." "Oh." "I can practically see the wheels turning." They'd reached the small terrace outside Zoe's villa, where a table and chairs overlooked the sea. Without really thinking about it, Zoe sat down, suddenly reluctant to end the day. "I keep waiting for you to tell me I'm doing everything wrong," she said finally. Nathan sat down across from her, his expression puzzled. "Why would I do that?" "'Cause that's what you always did in college. Every project, every event, every plan I made, you'd find a way to improve it or change it or make it completely different. Is that really what you think I was doing?" "Wasn't it?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the water. "Do you remember Professor Martinez's marketing class? The final project where we had to create a campaign for that nonprofit?" Zoe remembered. She'd spent weeks researching, creating detailed demographic analyses and media timelines. Nathan had come to their final meeting with a single sketch on a napkin and a crazy idea about guerrilla marketing. "You completely scrapped my presentation," she said. "I built on your presentation. You'd done all the research, identified the target audience, figured out the budget constraints. I just suggested a different way to reach them. You made me look unprepared. I made us look creative. That campaign won the class competition, remember? Professor Martinez said it was the best combination of solid research and innovative thinking he'd seen in years." Zoe did remember. She also remembered how frustrated she'd been that Nathan had gotten credit for what she'd seen as undermining her work. "I was always so angry with you," she said softly. "I know. I could never figure out why. I thought we made a good team. I did make a good team. That's why I was angry." Nathan looked at her, confusion clear in his expression. "I don't understand. I spent my whole life learning to be in control, to have plans and backup plans and contingencies for everything. And then you'd show up and prove that sometimes the best solution was the one nobody planned for. It made me feel like everything I thought I knew about myself was wrong." Nathan's voice was gentle. "Having a plan doesn't make you wrong. Being prepared doesn't make you less creative. You're not less than anything just because you approach problems differently than I do. But you always had better ideas. I had different ideas, usually built on your foundation. Do you think any of my suggestions today would have worked if you hadn't already figured out the logistics? If you hadn't already talked to the vendors and understood the constraints?" Zoe felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of tension she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "I never thought about it that way. You see the structure? I see the possibilities. Neither one works without the other." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the lights of fishing boats move across the dark water. Zoe felt a strange sense of peace, as if a question she'd been asking for years had finally been answered. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said eventually. "Sure. Why event planning? I mean, I know you're good at it, but why choose something that's basically controlled chaos?" Zoe smiled. "Because when it works, when everything comes together perfectly, it creates something beautiful. A moment that people will remember for the rest of their lives. That's worth the chaos. Even when people like me come along and mess with your perfect plans, especially then, because sometimes the messing makes it better." Nathan smiled, and for a moment, Zoe felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with professional collaboration. The realization scared her more than any logistical challenge. "I should get some sleep," she said, standing up quickly. "Tomorrow's going to be busy." "Zoe, wait." She turned back to find Nathan standing too, his expression serious. "I'm glad Rebecca asked us to do this together," he said. "I forgot how much I missed working with you, even though I'm neurotic and controlling. Even though you're passionate and thorough, and you care about getting things right." The flutter in her chest intensified. "Good night, Nathan. Good night, Zoe." As she closed her villa door behind her, Zoe realized she was in serious trouble. Because somewhere between the vendor meetings and the sunset conversations, she'd stopped seeing Nathan Cross as the enemy and started seeing him as something much more dangerous, a partner. And maybe, possibly, something more than that. The thought terrified her. Because if there was one thing Zoe Bennett couldn't plan for, it was falling in love. The morning of Rebecca's wedding dawned perfect and clear, but Zoe was already awake, had been for hours. Running through her final checklist. In 3 days, she and Nathan had transformed the villa into something magical. White fabric draped from olive trees, creating intimate seating areas. Local wildflowers mixed with imported roses filled ceramic urns positioned along the stone. Pathways. String lights would be lit as the sun set, creating a canopy of stars above the reception. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was exactly what Rebecca had dreamed of. So why did Zoe feel like something was missing? She found Nathan on the ceremony terrace, adjusting his camera equipment in the early morning light. He looked up when she approached, and she felt that familiar flutter that had been getting stronger each day. "Nervous?" he asked. "Always, but it's good nervous. Everything's ready. Everything looks incredible, Zoe. You've outdone yourself." "We've outdone ourselves," she corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you," Nathan smiled, and Zoe felt her heart skip a beat. Over the past few days, she'd started to look forward to their morning coffee conversations, their late-night planning sessions, the way he made her laugh when vendors were driving her crazy. She'd started to notice things about him that had nothing to do with work, the way he helped elderly guests find their seats, how he remembered everyone's names, the gentle way he spoke to Rebecca when she was nervous. "I have something for you," Nathan said, reaching into his camera bag. He pulled out a small wrapped package as an early celebration gift. Zoe unwrapped it carefully, revealing a leather-bound notebook, simple and elegant. Inside the front cover, Nathan had written, "For the woman who sees the structure in chaos and finds beauty in the details." "Nathan, this is beautiful, but I can't accept it's not expensive. I just thought you might like something special to record your ideas. Your real ideas, not just vendor lists and timelines." Zoe looked down at the notebook, running her fingers over the smooth leather. No one had ever given her a gift that showed. They understood her work, her passion, so completely. "Thank you," she said softly. "I love it." "Good, because I was thinking after today maybe we could." "Zoe, Nathan, thank goodness you're here." Rebecca's voice carried across the terrace as she hurried toward them, still in her pajamas, her hair in curlers. "We have a problem." "A big problem?" Zoe's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "The musicians are stuck in Athens. Their flight was canceled due to strikes and they won't be able to make it until tomorrow at the earliest." Zoe felt the familiar panic rising in her chest. The acoustic quartet they'd planned was supposed to be the perfect solution, the detail that would make everything work. Without them, the ceremony would be flat, lifeless. "Okay," she said, her mind already racing through possibilities. "We can find a replacement. Perhaps be local musicians who I already called everyone," Dimitri suggested. Rebecca interrupted. "It's tourist season, and everyone's already booked." "I'm so sorry, Zoe. I know you planned everything around the music." Zoe stared at her friend, feeling her carefully constructed timeline crumbling. Without the processional music, the ceremony would have to be completely restructured. The timing would be off, the emotional moments would fall flat, and Rebecca's perfect wedding would be ruined. Nathan said softly, touching her arm. "It's going to be okay. We'll figure something out." "How?" Zoe asked, her voice tight. The music was integral to everything. The processional, the ceremony, the transition to the reception. Without it, the whole flow is wrong. What if we didn't need professional musicians? Nathan asked thoughtfully. What? Do you mean, what if the music came from the guests themselves? What if we asked everyone to sing Rebecca down the aisle? Something simple, something everyone knows? Zoe stared at him. You want our wedding guests to sing? Why not? It would be personal, meaningful, more intimate than any hired quartet. But what if they don't want to? What if they're too embarrassed? What if it sounds terrible? Rebecca grabbed Zoe's hands. Actually, I love this idea. Remember my birthday party junior year, when the karaoke machine broke and everyone just started singing together? It was magical. That was different. That was a party, not a wedding. This is my wedding, Rebecca said firmly. And I want it to be full of people I love, not perfect strangers playing perfect music. Nathan's right. This could be even better than what we planned. Zoe looked between her friend and Nathan, feeling that familiar sense of everything spinning out of control. But as she looked at Rebecca's face, bright with excitement and possibility, she realized something had shifted. Inside her, "What song?" she asked. "All You Need Is Love," Rebecca said immediately. "Everyone knows it. It's simple, and it's exactly how I feel about today." "We'll need to let everyone know," Zoe said, her planner mind already adjusting. Recomput. Notes on the ceremony programs: maybe have James's brother lead it, since he has a good voice. "See?" Nathan said, grinning. "You're already making it work." "I'm making it work differently," Zoe corrected. "There's a difference, is there?" 3 hours later, Zoe stood at the back of the ceremony space, watching guests take their seats. The afternoon light was perfect, casting everything in a golden glow. Rebecca was radiant in her simple silk dress, her hair crowned with wildflowers. James waited at the altar, looking nervous and happy and completely in love. "You did it," Nathan said, appearing beside her. "This is perfect." "We did it," Zoe corrected. "We don't know if it's perfect yet. The singing could be a disaster. It won't be. Trust me. I'm learning too." The music coordinator, James's brother David, stepped forward and addressed the guests. "Good evening, everyone. As you know, we've had a small change of plans today. Instead of professional musicians, Rebecca and James would like all of you to help send Rebecca down the aisle. We're going to sing All You Need Is Love together, and I promise it will be beautiful because it's coming from people who love them." Zoe held her breath as David began the familiar melody. For a moment, only his voice carried across the terrace. Then, slowly, other voices joined in. James's grandmother, her voice wavering but strong. Rebecca's college friends, harmonizing like they used to at parties. The children in the front row, singing enthusiastically, if not entirely on key, as Rebecca began her walk down the aisle. 200 voices rose together in a song about love, and Zoe felt tears streaming down her face. It was imperfect and spontaneous, and absolutely magical. It was everything she'd never planned, and everything she'd never known she wanted. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's perfect," Nathan said, and she realized he was taking pictures not just of the ceremony, but of her reaction to it. "Stop," she said, laughing through her tears. "Never. This is the moment you learn to trust the magic." The ceremony was flawless, full of laughter and tears and improvised moments that were somehow exactly right. The reception that followed was equally perfect. With guests dancing under the string lights and sharing stories under the stars, Zoe found herself relaxing into the evening, actually enjoying the party instead of just managing it. "Dance with me," Nathan said, appearing at her elbow as the band played a slow song. "I should check on the dessert service." "The dessert service is fine. Dance with me." She let him lead her onto the dance floor, aware that she was crossing another line, moving from professional partnership into something more personal and dangerous. "Thank you," she said as they swayed together. "For today, for this week, for showing me that sometimes the best plans are the ones you don't make. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the best magic happens when you care enough to plan for it." They danced in comfortable silence, and Zoe realized she didn't want the evening to end. She didn't want to go back to Chicago, back to her separate life, back to pretending that Nathan Cross was just a colleague she occasionally worked with. "Nathan," she said softly. Yeah. I need to tell you something. He pulled back slightly too. Look at her. His expression serious. Okay, I think I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I've been falling in love with you for years, and I was just too scared to admit it. Nathan stopped dancing, his hand still holding hers. Zoe, I know it's complicated. I know we live in different cities and have different approaches to everything. I know it doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense, Nathan said softly. Because I've been in love with you since college, and I've been trying to figure out how to tell you without scaring you away. You have? Why do you think I always challenged your plans? I was trying to get you to see me, to notice me as more than just the guy who showed up late to meetings. Zoe laughed, feeling giddy and terrified and wonderfully alive. That's a terrible strategy. It worked, didn't it? Eventually. Nathan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I love your lists and your timelines and your backup plans. I love that you see problems before they happen and solutions before problems exist. I love that you care so much about making things perfect for other people. I love that you see magic where I see chaos, Zoe said. I love that you make me brave enough to trust that sometimes the best things are the ones you don't plan for. Like this. Nathan kissed her under the string lights, surrounded by the celebration they'd created together. And Zoe felt something settle into place in her chest. This wasn't part of any plan she'd ever made, but it was perfect in a way that had nothing to do with timelines or logistics and everything to do with love. When they finally broke apart, the band was playing the last song of the evening, and guests were beginning to drift back toward the villa. Rebecca appeared beside them, glowing with happiness and champagne. So, she said, grinning at them both. I'm guessing you two won't need separate flights home. Actually, Nathan said, looking at Zoe, I was thinking we might extend our stay, see a little more of Greece together. Like that, Zoe said. Though I should probably make some reservations. Research the best restaurants. Create an itinerary. Or, Nathan said, we could just see what happens. Or we could do both, Zoe said, smiling. Plan some things, leave room for others. And a balance. A balance, Nathan agreed. I like that. As they walked back toward the villa, hands intertwined, Zoe realized that love, like the best weddings, wasn't about perfect planning or spontaneous magic. It was about finding someone who complemented your strengths and balanced your weaknesses. Someone who made you better, not by changing you, but by helping you become more fully yourself. She'd spent her whole life believing that control and spontaneity were opposites, that you had to choose between planning and adventure, between safety and passion. But walking across the terrace with Nathan, surrounded by the evidence of what they could create together, she realized she'd been wrong. Sometimes the most beautiful things happened when you found the perfect balance between holding on and letting go, between the structure you created and the magic you allowed, between the love you planned for and the love that found you anyway. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you found someone who helped you discover that the best kind of love was the kind that surprised you every day, even when you thought you had it all figured out, especially then.